um, researched regarding the project. So I don't think you really missed any information. It was just discussing that that the technical review committee had met, that Krista had discussed the matter with Hoosier Energy. And then there's another solar project in close proximity to this location. And she was speaking with the individuals involved in that project just to see if there was involvement with the battery storage facility. They have indicated that that was not ongoing at the time. So I think they're, they indicated they were separate projects. So it was just information being gathered to make sure we understood the full import of the project that's being presented to us.
I got you. And I will be happy to, Tim, we can share what's called the facility study, which is something that Hoosier conducts on behalf of MISO, which they have done for this project, and we could provide that to you. It's an official document. It's the last part of the MISO study process. So Hoosier's not only, well aware of this project, they've actually designed the substation upgrades that would be required for this project. Has nothing to do with any subsequent solar project. I understand is in the queue a couple of years behind us, but I'm happy to provide that information to the board.
Thank you.
Okay, board, do you guys have questions directly for Open Road? I'm sure we do. And my first question was, we spoke at the BZA about landscaping, and I see you guys have just recently submitted something regarding to that. Haven't dove into it much. What did you base that general landscaping design on?
Happy to answer that, Tim, if that's all right. So
yeah,
at the hearing, the feedback was, we want more opportunity for particularly the neighbors to have input on the landscaping plan. And then we also want an actual plan that's not just the detailed schematics we provided in our application, but it's a full plan. How are you going to plant it? What height? What happens if they die? And a permitting condition that matches that plan. So what we've provided here actually has been shared earlier with both the closest neighbors to the east and to the west, has their buy-in and their input. What you'll see there is, in particular, the gentleman that owns a property to the east had concerns about the view shed impact. He's already been negatively impacted by the Hoosier substation that's there. And so what we put into the plan there is actually doubled the number of trees that we'd be planting along that eastern edge, the entire eastern edge of the project. And we agreed to make all of those trees evergreen trees. Again, this is the closest battery storage project to that residence is battery storage container rather is 800 feet away. And it is also, there's a Hoosier substation effectively between us and that project, and not exactly between, but in close proximity to that residence, much closer than this project will be. But we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that not only our project's impact, but even the existing substation impact might be mitigated by some of the work that we're putting in. So that plan you're seeing there codifies the 100% evergreen and the doubling of the landscaping along the east side, as well as all those other details that the board and comments from the neighbors had asked for in terms of and maybe sharing too much here, but I understand the experience with the Hoosier substation was that the plants were planted and then nothing was followed up with. There were no real conditions there. And so what we've done here is actually craft a condition that you as the board and the county can enforce on us on what the landscaping needs to look like, how it's maintained over time, etc.
But you didn't use our landscape ordinance for this, is that correct?
No, and I mean we're happy to take input and change it if you see. I would assume this is 100% evergreen is more than the ordinance calls for, but the ordinance didn't apply to this project in particular. So we really kind of started from scratch and took the input from the neighbors to try to make this as effective as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the ordinance may not apply because it's a special exception, but based on the money invested in the returns, I would expect it to match more of our industrial zoning requirements. That's just a thought that I have.
And just on that, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so we're happy to take a look at that, and I assume if what we're proposing is more substantial than the industrial standards, we'll stick with what we've got.
Well, Tim, the industrial standards are for industrial uses. This is, 8 to 10 feet containers, 800 feet away from the receptors, but we can explore further.
Yeah, it's based essentially your vehicle use areas, and there's a relatively simple formula to calculate the 4 different types of ground cover that are required. And this isn't going to be anywhere close to that. So that's just, I mean, it's easy to get a hold of and to calculate that. Do we have anything else, Gary?
Brad, does that include a berm in the industrial?
It's recommended typically. There is a berm recommended at soil, especially if you're going, I mean, that's just my thought here. This is more of, I know we're on a special exception, but with the reference to how much money is invested and the returns on that money, I'm thinking of it more as industrial. And it is recommended to do a berm in conjunction with the 5 or 4 different types of ground cover.
And I think from what we heard from people last meeting, that the berms, they indicated they would appreciate having that.
Correct.
The only comment I have about that is that while it might seem like that, the height of the battery storage containers is about 10 feet, whereas most industrial buildings are, especially modern industrial buildings, are more than 35 feet tall. And you typically have a lot more noise with industrial buildings, particularly because of the trucks that are delivering materials, and then the trucks that come and ship the material away. So here we've got much shorter project, and then we have once it's done being built, like anything else, significantly less noise, and so I think we're happy to take a look at the industrial standards, but we'll need to determine if amount actually, there's any benefit to it, simply because the noise and height are so different than a typical industrial project.
And not just the noise and height, but industrial projects have fuel inputs, chemical inputs, traffic, noise, emissions, solid waste, liquid waste, a lot of product being made and either piped out or trucked out or whatnot. This is a utility use, and I would just urge the board not to risk the viability of the project by applying berms and an unnecessary level of screening on something that has a passive utility impact.
This is the same as our B zoning as well. Our B and I zoning have the same landscape regulations, so that's kind of where we stand with it.
Okay. Well, we will certainly take a look at that.
Yeah, and I just want to say we didn't have that input when we were putting this together. We would have raised, worked more closely with your staff on this particular issue. We just had no guidance or input on this topic until just now. So.
Yeah, a question from a board member.
Yes, I had asked at the last meeting about why the concern of the many hours of training of fire departments, EMS, et cetera. And I understand that if one of these catches on fire, it would literally burn itself out. And that the reason you have the fire department and the access to water is to hose down any other units. But looking at your pictures, and I mean, not unsightly for a commercial, but certainly not pretty for a farm. I can't imagine that just like, and correct me if I'm wrong, our fire departments are volunteer, correct? So,
In that area, yes.
and I mean, I live in that area, not close, but our fire departments are volunteers. So let's just say worst case scenario, something happens and volunteer firemen can't get there in what might be a reasonable time to hose down these others to keep them hot. I mean, I don't know, I just have visions of mass, I don't know, very uncomfortable, let's put it that way. So let's just say that the volunteer fire department doesn't make it there in time, and many of these catch on fire. Yeah, they'll burn themselves out, but in the meantime, what happens?
I'm happy to answer that. So each of these units are firewall rated on the outside. So they're actually tested at 3 inches apart. The test light a unit on fire, and they're rated not to propagate to the next unit. That doesn't mean that we just kind of sit back and watch. We would still respond just like with any other fire in the county. And so we've engaged with the EMS community, and the conditions before you are to their satisfaction. So hopefully that the combination of those 2 points, address the concern.
Yeah, it makes very logical sense, but just to think about it, why do you have need for quick recovery, for a pond, for all this, if they're so well fire rated? I mean, I just, in my mind, I can't, it just sounds like the left and the right, don't make sense.
Yeah. So you prepare for the absolute worst. And quite frankly, that's the same approach that your fire department and most emergency management personnel do. You have fire equipment to save people from burning homes. You have fire equipment to cut people out of cars. Everybody hopes that you do not have to use that equipment. And so, but you have it just in case. And here, especially with this being a type of project that a lot of people aren't familiar with, and unfamiliarity sometimes causes concern, which we perfectly understand. So we wanted to make it clear. We're preparing for a fire, we're preparing for the worst, but we don't think it's going to happen. If we had any inclination that it would ever happen, we wouldn't build it. You wouldn't spend $150 million on something like that. We don't think it's ever going to catch fire. But you prepare for the worst, and you train for the worst, and you make sure that the local fire departments are aware of what's going on. It doesn't take an inordinate amount of time. Here's the plan, here's what you do, and you're done. I get why when you focus on that, it might seem a little daunting, but it's an appropriate plan. It's an appropriate approach, and the risk is not significant, but you just prepare for it anyway.
And I'll just add that you don't need on-site, you don't need the things that we've proposed here. We've proposed them out of an abundance of, if there's a concern locally, there's not a lot of experience. So there's a double layer of responsiveness to the concern. But to be frank, you don't need those things. We're giving them as conditions, but you don't need them.
We have another question.
I realize that common sense is telling all of us that it is going to happen as far as electric cars. Our question is, why did you pick that certain spot? That high line goes all through the county. In some places, there is no people that would be in their front yard or so forth and so on. I live at the south end of the county, and it really goes all the way down there, and there's a lot of empty space that can be filled without people being upset over it. I realize that it would be good for us in the future. We're going to be forced to buy those kind of cars, whether we want to or not. And I do know that that's what's going to happen eventually. What my question is why does it have to be right there?
Thank you for the question. So this location was selected because the technical nature of the grid itself means that there's room for this type of project there. There are a lot of places with transmission lines where you can't fit this type of project electrically. So it's actually quite rare to find that perfect place. That said, this is one of the most rural, the locations I've ever seen for a project like this in terms of the distance to the nearest neighbor being 800 feet on one side and 1,200 feet on the other. That's pretty rare. It's hard to find a place that's that far away from residences. So in terms of with electrical features like this site. So hopefully that's, and this site's unique in that, the switching station there takes power from the MISO grid and drops it down to a voltage to distribute it throughout the area to the businesses and residences. So it's a unique location on the grid. It's not like any location with a transmission line would do.
So you have researched other places besides this one here in the county?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Have another question from the board member.
So looking at item 2, letter C on your commitment, this speaks to the inactivity of the facility. You stated in here that if it is discontinued for a period of 24 months, it shall be considered permanently deactivated. Couple question is, I have, if this system is as important as you indicate to our electrical grid, why was 24 months selected? And then second part to that is, who starts the clock? Is it the owner's responsibility to report to the county that, hey, this system is currently deactivated? And yes, so that's my question.
Yeah, there's no real magic to. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, there is no real magic to 24 months other than when you go out, I've been involved with a multitude of other types of projects that are renewable energy, solar, wind, and now battery energy storage systems. And my experience has been that, counties typically kind of like to do, hey, this county over there did that. We'd like to do that too. And so you oftentimes see decommissioning agreements where that time period, frankly, is 24 months. Sometimes it can be a little shorter, 12 months. Sometimes it can be a little longer, 30, 36 months. But so we picked 24, nothing magic to it. And certainly we'd be happy to notify the county if the project is not storing electricity for whatever reason. That would, from our perspective, that would be very bad, but we'd be happy to let the county know.
You'd be happy to, or is that a requirement within these commitments that we could be adding?
Yeah, we can.
No, we'd be. Yeah, we certainly can add that. Yeah, happy to.
That'll work.
So the owner would notify the county, the building commissioner, of the inactivity of the facility.
Yes.
is 24 months of inactivity.
Why would it be?
That's a long time.
2 years.
2
I
years.
would be more comfortable with a 6-month period.
6, yeah, at least 12, yeah.
Yeah, I think part of the thought with not having it be as too short of a period of time is there are, and this would not interfere with pilot payments or tax payments, obviously, but there may be maintenance issues or issues outside of the control of the project that has to do with the grid, where a project might have to go down for a period of time and it's not affecting you or the neighbors. In fact, you continue to get tax payments and all of that. But 6 months is short in some of those scenarios. And 24 months, again, I'm not saying that, we would ever need a full 24 months, but at the same time, that flexibility may come at no cost and in fact be to the benefit of the county because we're continuing to pay taxes during 12 months, 18 months on the capital asset there that's, for whatever reason is not operating. So just want to point out that there may be an alignment here where it's okay to give a project like this the flexibility of 24 months since, the primary benefit locally is a lot of tax money coming out of the project.
I like 12 or 18.
I mean, I fully understand, especially with the world we live in today, that the lack of availability of parts and systems break down. 6 months, you may not have a part to repair it, at no fault of yours or the owners, whoever that may be. My main concern is as technology advances very rapidly, in 5 months or 5 years, excuse me, even 10 years, this type of technology is by the wayside. And now all of a sudden we've got to wait another 2 years before we actually are able to remove that. So that's what I'm trying to protect the county from.
In that scenario, it's also worth noting that if the technology advances that much, where this facility is, I think, obsolete would be the way you're describing it. The batteries, the material in the batteries are still valuable and would remain valuable even if there's other technology for the storage of electricity. So the owner would probably be more inclined to start shutting it down so it could utilize the materials in the battery if that were in fact the case. If the owner is trying to hold on to start generating again, it isn't going to be because it's obsolete. It's going to be for the reasons I think that Cyrus was mentioning. It's something that we can't necessarily foresee here. Such as the grid has an issue we've got to shut down, or there's an issue with parts or something along those lines. That's what we're just trying to build in a little cushion there is all. So
Cyrus, to Rick's point, in our ordinance, our solar ordinance, our wind ordinance, our cell tower or wireless communication tower ordinance, we all have a decommissioning after 12 months of inactivity. So that's kind of, that's where this thought is coming from, our other ordinances.
Okay. Would it be possible to change the 24 to 18 months? Is that
I think it makes a lot of sense in line with our current ordinance.
okay?
go at 12 months.
18 months.
That would be my recommendation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Is that okay, Cyrus?
If it's not, we'll get back to the board. It comes down to financeability issues, so we'll try to make it work.
Eric, do you have anything else?
No, not this time.
Gary? Okay, now that the board's done, I'm going to give the public a chance to come up and have a conversation about this. I'm gonna give it an open floor. We'll keep it fairly quick and civil. Not everybody's gonna get 20 minutes to talk, especially Jay, because he'll take 30. I would like everyone to come up who has something pertinent to say and give your facts to the board. Who's first?
Good evening, CJ.
Go ahead,
You know I like the last one. You know I like the last one.
Yeah, I know, you like it. Okay, so,
State your name.
State your name,
Yep.
please.
been through this many times, sitting at where you are. Albert Arvin, you know, I've got some concerns about this because what research I've done, it looks like that, much like the technical review committee has recommended or has pointed out, that these facilities often are utilized with solar farms. Our comprehensive plan clearly states that solar farms are not desirable in the county. The residents of Decatur County said that that's not desirable. My fear is that this will be, if this is installed or approved, that this will be utilized to say, look, all the facilities are here to support our solar facility, making it that much harder to say no to a solar farm. My other question, and I have a question for the guys, is what is the expected life or the life expectancy of the batteries in this facility?
Board, is that a question that we?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So on the first question, and we talked about this at the hearing, the way that the system works for a solar project or a gas project or any project to be integrated into the grid, they need capacity. And while this type of project, this battery storage project will make the grid more resilient, it actually uses headroom on the transmission system the way that MISO, the grid operator, models this type of thing. So this project coming here actually makes the next project, whatever it may be, whether it's solar, coal, or nuclear, more unlikely because we are fitting, this much room into the grid. And the way that MISO, the grid operator, models it, they have to model it as 100% generation and 100% load, because batteries act as both generation and load. That's a very technical way of saying a project being added at this location makes another project in this nearby area actually less likely, not more likely. All that being said, this is a battery storage project. There is no affiliation or coordination in any way with another project of any kind, including solar. And I understand if you look in the public queue in MISO, you see 2 solar projects that have come in the year or 2 after we came into the queue in 2019. One is, I believe, nearby this project in the queue. I have no idea where physically it is or whether it's a pie in the sky thing or if it's a real project, but one of our landowners or neighbors actually showed us a letter from a developer that I think is a reputable developer. So I think there is a solar project being developed. We don't know anything about it. And this project will make that project more difficult to fit into the grid, just frankly. I understand there's another project in Greensburg. And again, I don't know anything about that project either, but the one close to us will be less likely because of this project moving forward. That's just a technical fact. And you can ask MISO if you'd like, or even Hoosier to explain, if you wanted from a third party source. On the other question, was there any follow-up on that one?
No, just answer as far as the length of battery.
Yeah, sure. And we talked about this at the hearing as well. So the batteries can last anywhere from 12 to 15 years. And the nature of this facility with the containers is you have a rack of batteries, and as one approaches the end of its life, you slide it out just like a hard drive in a server rack, and you put in a new battery. And so there's this constant upgrading of the batteries, just like in your your equipment at home. So that's the model, and the containers themselves don't have a shelf life. The infrastructure that connects all the batteries to the electrical grid, like that substation there, doesn't have a particular shelf life, is kind of in perpetuity, but the individual batteries would be slid out and replaced with new ones along the way as time goes on.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Please state your name.
My name is Kim Nobby. I am more or less a neighbor to this facility, although I've never been contacted. First, I'd like to know the health concerns that might be radiated off of this battery packs that you're putting in the field next to me. And then secondly, I would also like to know the water source, because I'm assuming that you're going to have a water coolant to control the heat of the batteries. And we're all on wells out there, and I really don't want my well running dry because of your battery packs.
Thank you, and I would love to talk with you offline if you wouldn't mind taking my number and reaching out to me. I don't know why we haven't in the past, but to the second question first, the coolant, it'd be a normal kind of HVAC setup. If we wouldn't actually be using water to cool the batteries like the like a conventional power plant, which uses a lot of water. So this is much more like HVAC units on a commercial building. You could think of it that way. So there's no impact to the water supply there. The water supply that was discussed earlier has to do with a condition we offered up to put 25,000 gallons of tanks to have a immediately available water supply to the fire EMS if they were ever to need it. They actually didn't say they needed it. We offered it up, they accepted it. So there would be 25,000 gallons available at that time, at any time on site, but no, no bigger water load locally. I think the other question was just a general health and safety question, and I'm happy to provide material that we presented in the previous hearing, which goes into this issue at length. If it's more appropriate to do it that way, or however you'd like me to answer that question. But in short, there are not, there's nothing that can leak. There's no solid waste, liquid waste, emissions. It's effectively a passive neighbor, similar to that substation there. In fact, it's almost entirely the same chemistries as in that substation next door.
And I will state that we have all of that as public record. So anybody here that wants that can reach out to the area plan office and we can get that to you, all of the information. Okay. Next individual.
Bill Wittenstock, just a follow-up of the Nobby's question. If there is a fire and you spray water on these batteries or somehow, and it gets into the water system in aquifers and such, what's the protocol there?
Thank you for the question. So one thing we covered in the hearing previously is we talked a little bit about the chemistries in these batteries. The actual the actual battery chemistry, if there's a break in the battery, it actually evaporates. There's not a different set of chemistries versus what you would find in a typical house fire. So if you have a typical house fire, there are plastics, there's some metal, wood, paint, things like that. And the fire fighters obviously are going to put water on a typical house fire. These containers are more dense than a typical house, but much, much smaller. So it's a class A fire, and it would behave very similarly to, a house being on fire and firefighters putting that fire out. There are no toxins that would be, released. There's no liquids that can leak. You don't want to inhale the house fire, the flue stack from a house fire. You want to, stay away from it, but it's not dissimilar to that. And that's a risk, we all love the groundwork.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Brent Muckerhide, neighbor on 400 North to this. And I spoke at the last meeting, and again, I've spoken to Cyrus several times, and I always say he's professional in dealing with you, so there's nothing against that. But a comment to some of the questions. One was, I was the only one that had Hoosier Energy, I think, in my kitchen trying to sell me on why a substation was good out my front window. And he said, it starts with a willing landowner. That's why we pick where we pick. Not do people want to sell ground to projects like this. And that guy at that kitchen table, and the only other person that could have been there was Mark Risen, because we're the two living with it. And across the road, as you see the rest of the neighbors here. That's how they say these things start. And I tend to believe he was being pretty honest with me. Second, related to the fire, I've looked at all this. I think it is. But relating it to a house fire, I haven't seen too many 15-acre houses. And I know one combustible unit, well, whatever. I can't be sure. I'm living next to it. What happens when lightning strikes and more go up and the whole thing burns down? That's 15 acres of house fires. That's going down on my property that my well and everything that I have on my property is drawing from. The other concerns that we have, we've been working with the landscaping. We've asked for a berm. They have provided the evergreen. We're working with that. But the part of the other thing, the concern that we had, when I hear the solar projects are totally disconnected, I think that's where, and I know the landowners are only willing to sell certain patches. We had a landowner between us that doesn't live with us. The landowner that sold the substation, they're not here. They don't live out there. But they keep selling the land for these purposes. And we have people that keep going along with it. And I find it ironic that it was a little bit agitative that they were not happy that they were not communicated to. I got a letter 3 days before the meeting from anybody in this community. That was after a technical review committee was already done. We haven't had a seat at that table. So that's why we just appreciated the open forum that you guys took this to. But it's serious financial repercussions to the residential lives that are out there along with the safety. What do you think that substation cost me if you're the one trying to buy my house, or you're the one trying to sell my house? Everybody wants to tell me how easy it is to live by these things. You ever Googled living under power lines? And I don't trust Google a lot, so you got to go deeper. But have you ever done it? It's not heartwarming, I can tell you, because there's no research to go either way to make you feel good either way. And I'm saying either way, good or bad. I can't compete with these guys' technical knowledge, and I'm not going to try to. But I think there has to come we looked at the area plans, comprehensive plan. Where does this fit in? So they're saying, and maybe it doesn't have, like they're saying, no tie to solar, but there's 50 acres left on that field between Mark and I that what's going to happen is they need a little more. You're going to tell me solar can't be produced energy, that batteries can't store it and produce it back to the grid? I don't know what they know, and I'm not trying to be an obstructionist, but the common sense and the guts telling me that just doesn't all add up. And then we ask for what protection do you have beyond expansion if you guys, and I'm not putting it all, if you guys ask us to live with this and to accept residential loss of money, because that's the power that you have. If you guys do that, what is the protection beyond for expansion? I don't really think there is. There can be goodwill, there can be good intent, by this board, but what happens when it's 15 years down the road and the board's different, there's a new person in here? Because from what I research on this, is Open Road probably won't be the owners of this 5 or 6 years from now. So how do we have protections against that? And our community has already been asked to live with, and me specifically, in my front yard, a substation. I think a little bit about that, and I think, okay, we're growing, businesses are expanding, the grid needed a little more from another direction. I get it, but that transmission line runs a lot of places. That substation could have been put where there's not a house sitting 500 foot from it. If somebody in this county would have reached out and done something for us, that could have been eliminated. It could have been somewhere else. And now we're stuck with that. Why do we have to get stuck with another obstinance to not only residential values, but the safety? Because, and I would have a question, and I think, Cyrus, you've probably answered more of my questions than you want to, but, you know, the other thing that I look at is when you're talking about the batteries in themselves, you know, if technology changes, he's often told me that he'll probably see the footprint reduce. But what I've heard is there's $1 million change to the substation. And Cyrus has told me that that substation isn't going to grow. Well, what protection did the previous board give me against that substation becoming 16 acres? None. Zero. Now, Cyrus is committed that this project will not grow that substation. And I believe Cyrus. He explained it to me. I guess I understand it to a very dumb level that I exist at that. But if there's $1 million being done to that, pretty significant changes, it sounds like. So what protections do we have against that as well? And I really don't think there is. This can just continue to grow and grow and grow. You know, if you come in and you look at the topography, or however you say the topography map, how they've placed the 15 acres, I get what they've done. If you do it any other way, it's going to be a lot of dirt movement. It's going to be a lot of expense. So is it done for that, or is it done for the betterment of the community? Because what if you made a narrow section of batteries that didn't get, that were 2,000 feet away from the house, or whatever? That wasn't done. Because the rest of that field falls off, becomes waterways, and it's not going to be easily transfigured that way. So I'm a businessman, and I get it. I think there's a place for solar, and I get it. I have solar on my house. My business is going to be putting solar on the roof. So what happens when all of the residential start doing that and businesses start doing that, and it pulls power off the grid? Why isn't all this adding up and making sense that pulling power off the grid is also helping not needing places like this? It's not adding up to me. And I know electrical vehicles, I'm involved in that. I make the battery casings at work for those cars. I understand what all that's doing. But there's a lot of businesses looking at rooftops where it's not even visible to the community, putting panels on 300,000 square foot of mine. Think if businesses would do that, how much is off the grid? We still need this? Seems to me that makes a hell of a lot more sense than a lot of farm ground, which I know we're not here to talk debatably about tonight, but that is farm ground being occupied by 15 acres of batteries. We're not talking 15 batteries. We are talking 15 acres. And I don't know how many other sites they have of this. I think in the last meeting, I sat back down and asked Brad if I could talk to him, maybe out of order, but how new is this? How many sites are there? Where are they? I see a couple mentioned in their report we got from the last meeting, but do we really know the effects? Why is Decatur County gotta be the one? Why does my house, my family, my kids gotta be the one? So I would still be interested in how many other sites are truly operating at this? How many are 15 acres? And what have they seen from those sites? More importantly, I think it was you who asked me the last meeting, you know, what do you here want us to do? What if you were living on 2002 West County Road 400 North? I don't get that seat.
Cyrus, can you answer the question about other facilities, 15 acres or greater?
Sure, happy to. And just to clarify, this facility is mostly empty space. The reason it's 15 acres is to address the very safety issues that, you know, underpin some of the comments you just heard. It's a lot of space between containers, and that's why it's 15 acres. And that's one of the safety features that we implement in a project like this versus one maybe 10 years ago that you would have seen developed. So there are a lot of projects in this size. Our team even has larger projects operating, but I think a lot of what Mr. Muckerhide is commenting on has to do with the substation that's in his, like literally in his front yard, and that's 300-400 feet from him, 40 feet tall, and buzzes constantly. And that is not this. This is a low profile project. It's quiet. It's we put it in the middle of the parcel to be away from all sides, to be away from the neighbors. So I think a lot of the comments, I really empathize with the frustration, and I would be frustrated too if you know, if you look at the situation there. We've actually reached out to Hoosier on Mr. Muckerhide's behalf and offered at our expense to plant trees on Hoosier's property in between the substation that currently exists and his house, just to try to, you know, address that, because it's not fair to him, but it's also not, we shouldn't be held to the standard of that substation. That's not our project, and we're keeping our project further away from his house, even though it's only 8-10 feet tall. That said, the facility study that Hoosier prepared that I will be sharing with the board shows you the footprint that Hoosier's designed for, you know, adding our project to their sub, connecting our project to sub. It doesn't increase the footprint of the substation, which is what I shared with Mr. Muckerhide. Were there other questions that you wanted me to respond to there?
No.
Good day. Hey,
You're fine.
Don't need to go back?
Go back up, Brent. You need your steps.
Hey, that's no good. Could they answer though about the other sites?
Yeah, so even if it's not 15 acres, Cyrus, give us something on the same capacity wise. What are we looking at in the state of Indiana? What have you guys got in the works? I know you're working through one in LaPorte County. What's the status on that one?
Sure. My impression was that Mr. Muckerhide was asking about operating projects, and so that's what I was responding to. Is there are lots of operating projects of that size or bigger across the country. Indiana's not, you know, at the front end of this, but I think you'll hear in the next 2 weeks that even Hoosier Energy joined all of the other utilities who have put out requests for proposal for capacity because they need it so badly, and that'll include battery storage. That's something you'll hear in the next week or two that Hoosier will put out. So that makes every utility in Indiana looking for this type of facility. So the question about, you know, is there really need, and can we just put solar on rooftops instead of this? I think that the utilities in the community are answering that question. But as far as, yes, this is the smallest project that we're developing in Indiana by capacity. We have a number of other projects in the similar size, but this is the smallest one. Oh, I guess let me also just mention on the solar, you know, the topic of solar. So this is literally an infrastructure project. It's adding batteries to a substation to increase the reliability of the grid, so that if a hurricane or tornado or lightning or hot weather knocks something out, that the lights stay on, and that is very valuable, and the utilities need it and they want it. So it's not, I mean, we started development of this in 2019. It's not something that we can just kind of move somewhere else. And it comes with a huge financial benefit to the local community. A lot of the things that Mr. Muckerhide just voiced are concerns that are not going to apply to this project. It does not have the same features of this big substation in his front yard. So I really, again, empathize with his concerns about the impact that substation has had. But frankly, a 10-foot tall series of structures, 800 feet away, there are already 3 rows of transmission lines between his house and where we'll be putting these containers. This is not going to affect the property value. And you know, I'll just go out on a limb here and say we've offered to put our money where our mouth is on the remaining property by offering to accept a exploration of selling that property to Mr. Muckerhide. And I feel kind of like I'm negotiating with one hand tied behind my back because I don't want to disclose confidential or private conversations, but I think it's fair to just make that public that we've offered to say, look, we're not expanding this facility. We have no plans, we have no applications, we have no intention, and we'll even sell you the rest of the land so you believe us. And you know, that's a preliminary conversation, but we have no reason to hold on to the rest of the land. You can see in our permit application exactly what we're proposing, and this board could reject any future application by us or by any solar developer to do a solar farm anywhere in the county, and it has nothing to do with us.
Thank you. Your name again, Bill, just for the record.
Bill Willis talking again. This is the first meeting I've been to about this. So I don't, maybe you guys know the answer to these questions. How many of these battery stations are in Indiana? And how many got put in, and how many have solar farms next to them now? Even though they're not connected, did that happen to other places?
Cyrus, you want to answer that?
Yeah, there are not a ton in Indiana. They're mostly in Texas, California, New York, Virginia, Ohio starting. But to answer, and some in Illinois, but to answer your question, there are 2 different kinds of battery storage integration with renewables. One is the solar farms that have the batteries in the field. So every, 5 or 7 acres, you've got a container like we have in this facility. And so if you have a 1,000-acre solar farm, you've got, a container like this every 7 or 10 acres across the entire field. That is common. It doesn't exist in Indiana yet, but it's coming as part of a lot of different solar projects that are under development. I don't think anything like that exists in Decatur County. What we're developing is much more like a gas peaking plant. It's just like a gas peaking plant in terms of how it participates in the market. It's independent of any other solar. You could say natural gas helps integrate solar into the grid because it helps stabilize the ups and downs, but that doesn't mean that a natural gas plant makes a solar project in Decatur County more likely. In fact, the natural gas plant will consume headroom in the transmission system. It'll be more expensive for that solar project to connect to the grid because you have to upgrade the transmission system to fit into the grid in Decatur County. So all that's to say, there's a Indianapolis Power and Light has a facility that's about 10 years old. It's similar to this in terms of it's a central project. It's not a part of a solar farm, and it's in their one of their main power plants. There's no solar attached to it, and there are a lot of projects under development that fit in both of these categories, both like ours, which is its own standalone power plant utility development, and also those facilities that are part of a solar farm, and they're physically spread out throughout the solar project. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Brown.
Hi, Robbins. I'm Director of the Economic Development Corporation of Decatur County. Probably loved it. I just asked for tolerance for the most part. we're tasked at the EDC to essentially place new developments that we bring to the community for the benefit of the community, both be it financial, be it infrastructure, be it jobs, what have you. Our task is actually to try to locate it according to the comprehensive plan to existing resources that we have.
Can you speak up, Brian?
Yeah. Do I have to repeat everything?
I'm deaf.
Okay. No, at the EDC, what we try to do is make use of our existing resources to the utmost that we have, and for the benefit of the community, be it financial, be it for jobs, be it for infrastructure, what have you. This project is one that I guess 2 years ago came up, and maybe actually before the ABC, and talked about alternative energy projects. At that time, it was solar, and saying that they are coming. This is the future. You guys have said it yourself. It's how Decatur County can mitigate that future benefit as many people as possible. I think the battery, Open Roads, Cyrus and Tim have been quite open with the both the Tech Review Committee, with the APC, with the EDC, with landowners like Brian, Brent, and you know, we don't always have that openness with some businesses as they come in. We looked at it from a comprehensive plan and saw that it in our opinion, in my opinion, I should say, I'll speak for myself, fit into the comprehensive plan because it was next to existing infrastructure, which is what they asked for, particularly utilities, next to existing utilities. Equally, we did not feel, because it was separate from a solar farm or solar project, we didn't feel that it actually fell underneath the comprehensive plans. I think it's policy 10 on alternative energy sources, because this is infrastructure. This is not an alternative energy generation site like the ones that were mentioned in the policy, such as methane collection, wind farms, and solar farms. As I've said to other people, that this battery project is no more a solar farm or a wind farm than a grain elevator is an actual farm. Grain elevators, they don't grow the corn, they don't grow the seed, they just store it and then they sell it to those who want it. This is a situation that they'll be storing the energy and then supplying the grid. It's connected to the grid, it's powered by the grid, and thus it's part of the grid. It should be seen as infrastructure, not as an alternative energy source. I didn't get a chance to address the Tech Review Committee on this. I think also from the EDC standpoint, I think forums like this are fantastic. We want something that works with the community, and we want full input. The other thing is that we also want the process properly. That we need to form a process. And I believe another recommendation from the Tech Review Committee was to actually rewrite this policy. It's very poorly written and incredibly general, and it's left much up to subjectivity and what have you. I think, and was that accurate to say that that was a suggestion from the Tech Review Committee to rewrite that policy, especially in the past 5 years? I think this was established in 2017. I think it was started and written in 2015. A lot has changed since that time. And as a community, if we are going to be able to be prepared to handle these sorts of projects and ourselves be transparent to those who are trying to invest in the community, as well as our community getting the full information from those trying to invest in us, we need to have the policies down. We need to have it very straightforward. It was my motivation in getting the solar ordinance through, and I'm going to continue to help in any way I can to make sure that this policy and our processes are better honed to handle these kind of projects. And it very well might be requiring a public session like this. The other thing is I would make one note on the Tech Review Committee. It says in the comprehensive plan that there needs to be a person represented from the utilities on it. I'm not sure if there is one currently, but I think we need to have, especially in situations like this, I think a person on that tech review committee from the utilities could have answered a lot of questions and could have asked a lot of good questions for this process. So I think we want to make sure that there's somebody representing the utilities on the tech review committee. So our processes as a county and as a community are more proper and in depth. That's all I'll say at this point. As far as the EDC goes, we do support this project. We see it as an asset. As far as anytime you have a grid backup like that, that's a benefit to the community, and it's also a benefit to a lot of businesses. And from strictly from the economic development side, to be able to say that we have such backup is an asset to the community as a whole. So that's from the Economic Development Corporation standpoint. That's what we're saying. And if any of you have any questions or anything from my stance or from the economic development stance, I'd be glad to field them. And equally, if anybody has any questions or thoughts or input, my door is open. We want to work for the community. We want to work with the community as much as possible. And my job is to help grow the community in Missouri. We do that to the best of our ability.
And I can speak to the technical review committee's
This is Krista speaking.
Yes. Comments regarding the comprehensive plan and updating it. Yes, the comprehensive plan was written some time ago, but it took us years to get through it. We did surveys. We surveyed we surveyed as many members of the community as we could get to make comments. And the majority of those comments were, we are a farming community, preserve our farmland. We do not support large scale renewable energy projects. Brian pointed out that this is not a renewable energy project, and I'm not here to dispute that. I don't know. But we as a community said we do not support large scale solar or large scale renewable energy projects. And that was after years of talking to everybody that would talk to us in this community. Now, I don't believe it's poorly written, but a comprehensive plan is just a guide. But it's a serious guide. You have to have that guide to have this board. You have to have the guide to write your ordinances. So yeah, it's maybe it's not as clear as an ordinance is or an ordinance could be, but it's still a guide and it is a living document. We can put together a group and we can rewrite portions of it because times are changing and that's something that needs to happen periodically. So yes, we decided that, if we were going to start down this path of renewable energy, large scale renewable energy, we need to revisit our community and find out if this is truly what we want. That's it.
Thank you, Krista. Do we have anyone else?
I gotta get more steps in, Brad.
State your name.
I appreciate the forethought from Brian, but 2 years, 3 days. I want to reiterate that. And then second, I want to clarify, since it was brought out about this awesome opportunity for me to spend over $15,000 an acre to buy excess land that doesn't mean anything to protect expansion for my community. Yeah. That is one heck of a deal that I'm trying to broker. So I want the context to be right when the context is presented about landscaping, about what we're trying to do to prevent expansion. Yeah, Mark and I are really trying to see what we can do, but I don't think either of you want to go spend that money on 50 acres and mean nothing and sit behind a battery station and next to 2 runs of high power electric lines. So how viable is that as a deal? I'm going to say that, and also, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, switching stations can be built. So there's plenty of people in the room that have a lot of acres that you could build a small switching station and probably accomplish what we're trying to accomplish here with a little less money. I get it. But I do believe, and again, the common sense thing and the guts just not settling all around this whole thing. There's people that could put this where nobody even sees it. That would help our community. And I'm pretty sure a small switching station could be a part of that development. But it tends that, it always, I again reiterate, when Hoosier was at my kitchen table, it starts with a willing landowner. That's what brings these projects on. And I want to say one more thing. And I'm not, again, Cyrus has been professional. I want you guys to know that. I'm not here downgrading his organization at all. But when you go about and you look at these things, when you talk about it, is it for the comprehensive plan? You know, we can talk about redoing our guidelines. You were involved for 2 years. Seems like a pretty good guideline. I was involved for 3 days, now a month. So all I'm saying is, as we develop this need for our community, okay, can we just look at all of it and not the easiest route to get it done? You've asked us, our community's all here. I don't think any answer in here about the substation still. And I don't think answer going in here. And I'm pretty sure I'm hearing everybody, if the community as a whole, we agree. Did we throw a fit over that substation? Anybody hear from us? Not one person. Not one person.
Thank you, Brent.
Ken Nobby. I have lived on the same property for 49 years. Prior to me, my grandparents bought that land. We lived there for a reason. We live there because it's quiet, it's non-populated, and we have great neighbors and a wonderful support system if we need it. Brian, you have a beautiful home. Would you put these storage units in your backyard, in your front yard, in your side yard? I just want to ask that all of you think about if you would put one of these storage units, and that's what they sound like to me. They sound like semi-trailers. They're going to be planted in the middle of 15 acres. Just please consider, if you wouldn't put it next to your home, don't put it next to ours.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Phil Nobby, the other side. It's the same thing like Brett said. You got to really think about property value. You know, I always tell a lot of people I work with in the same market stuff that, you know, you got to plan. If you don't plan, you're going to fail. Our plan is to build a new house up in that area that we would look east right at that area. Do I want to plan and build and then it fail? I mean, I don't want it in my front yard. I don't want to see it, right? And Reisman's and Muckrides will have it on their side yards and stuff. But if we build like we're wanting to plan, which 2 weeks ago we contacted a contractor to start the talk, but now we're going to look into it. So same thing like the wife said. You really want that to be in your front yard? You want that to be there? We talked about property value. Do I want to invest in the money to improve the property value of myself and my neighbors? And then this comes in, I don't know what property value is going to do. Is it going to, it goes up for a little bit and then we lose the property value? Am I going to invest in something that's going to go down? Because I'm looking at the future of us and our kids. What is the investment? What it's going to do for us? Is it going to hurt our investment building? Not only for the, you know, front porch sitting and enjoying our quiet country view, and then also our financial part of us and our kids and the future of our grandkids. So that's my point.
Phil? Have anyone else? Jay?
Hi.
Jay?
I got a lot to say. Nobody wants to hear that.
We don't have anyone else. I'm gonna let Cyrus, if you want to make a final statement before we wrap this up.
Thank you. Particular to the last couple of folks who spoke, I would be very happy to speak with you in person and show you more about the project. I actually don't know exactly where you live, so really looking forward to talking with you. And if you would email me at Cyrus, C-Y-R-U-S, at openroadrenewables.com. Easy, Cyrus at openroadrenewables.com, or we'll pass my cell phone number through staff to you, if you don't mind. I guess the sentiment that I appreciate, which is you don't want to see a big project and a bunch of noise, and that is our goal. And if you look at what we're proposing, 250 foot off the road and a planted buffer of 100% evergreens that are going to be much taller than the actual facility. So, you know, while obviously it's not going to make it invisible, I think relative to a lot of other stuff that could go there, hopefully you'll see that, you know, we're going out of our way to make it so it doesn't impact your view. I know the closest house is 800 feet away. I know the second closest house is 1,200 feet away. I'm assuming that means y'all are more than 1,200 feet away. But that said, I think once you see the visual renderings of landscaping and the landscaping plan, hopefully that'll address most of your concerns. The project won't be audible from the road or from across the road or from, you know, where your property is, presumably if it's further than that. So hopefully that helps at least introduce the conversation, and look forward to talking with y'all as soon as you're able to reach out to me. But that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Cyrus. We have one more question from a board member. Cyrus, you got a moment?
Cyrus, how could you facilitate us reaching out to some other communities that have these facilities, to view those facilities, to talk to the members in that community, to see what they've done? You know, it may not be in Indiana, we realize that. The laws may be different and so forth in counties and locals and things. But could you facilitate, you know, a reach out like that for us?
Sure. I mean, if y'all are, or should we discuss that with staff? I know we're not supposed to talk directly with you all, but I have some ideas, including a similarly situated, actually more densely populated project that we have in Texas that is state-of-the-art, similar scale, that you could actually visit if you're, I don't know if you're able to do that, but that would be one idea. But we could talk with your staff about other ideas.
Right. Okay. And the facility that's up at IPL, where is that located at?
It's inside of their one of their power plants. Power plant. I don't know how you describe it, but it's basically.
Is it in downtown Indianapolis?
No. It's a. I mean, it's a 10-year-old project, so it's or eight or 9-year-old project. So it's not. It would not look similar to this, but it's the same technology. It's not spaced apart like this is. There's no landscaping. But I was phrasing it only as by way of saying the same technology, actually several generations older, safety features, has been operating for 8 years in Indiana with no safety issues. Never heard of it, probably because nothing has ever happened in terms of safety.
Okay. If that's all everyone has, I believe that is the end of our public meeting for the evening. We don't need a motion or anything because this is just a special meeting. Thank you, everyone, for all of your input. And if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to Krista at the area plan.
She gave me that page. Yes, she did.